Kill them all. No witnesses. The words had barely left Kang Jae-won's mouth when his heart stopped. Not figuratively, not metaphorically. Actually stopped, seizing in his chest, like someone had reached through his ribs and squeezed. He was standing in the middle of Gangnam's busiest intersection, surrounded by 8 of his most loyal soldiers, orchestrating the hostile takeover of a rival syndicate's territory. Sirens wailed in the distance. Gunfire crackled from the warehouse behind him. His men were waiting for his next command, their hands on weapons, their eyes scanning for threats. But Jae-won couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Because across the crowded street, standing frozen among the panicked civilians fleeing the chaos, was a ghost, a woman he had buried in his memory 8 years ago. A woman he had abandoned in the dead of night without explanation. A woman he had sworn to forget. Because remembering her meant remembering the man he used to be. And that man was dead. Yoon Se-yeon. She was older now, thinner. The carefree joy that had once radiated from her face had been replaced by something harder, sharper. The expression of a woman who had survived things that should have destroyed her. But it wasn't her appearance that made Jae-won's blood turn to ice. It was the 2 children clinging to her hands. A boy and a girl, maybe 7 years old. Twins. The boy had Jae-won's eyes, dark, intense, carrying that particular weight that he recognized from every mirror he'd ever looked into. The girl had Seo-yeon's stubborn stare, defiant even in the midst of chaos, refusing to show fear even as gunshots echoed through the street. 7 years old, 8 years since he'd left. The math was simple. The truth was devastating. Boss, one of his soldiers touched his arm. Boss, we need to move. The police are... Get them. The words came out in a voice Jae-won didn't recognize. Raw, desperate, completely stripped of the cold authority that had made him the most feared crime lord in Seoul. What? The woman. The children. Get them. Now, before anyone else sees them. The soldier followed his gaze. Confusion flickered across his face. Why would the boss care about some random woman? Kill them all. No witnesses. The words had barely left Kang Jae-won's mouth when his heart stopped. Not figuratively, not metaphorically. Actually stopped, seizing in his chest, like someone had reached through his ribs and squeezed. He was standing in the middle of Gangnam's busiest intersection, surrounded by 8 of his most loyal soldiers, orchestrating the hostile takeover of a rival syndicate's territory. Sirens wailed in the distance. Gunfire crackled from the warehouse behind him. His men were waiting for his next command, their hands on weapons, their eyes scanning for threats. But Jae-won couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Because across the crowded street, standing frozen among the panicked civilians fleeing the chaos, was a ghost, a woman he had buried in his memory 8 years ago. A woman he had abandoned in the dead of night without explanation. A woman he had sworn to forget. Because remembering her meant remembering the man he used to be. And that man was dead. Yoon Se-yeon. She was older now, thinner. The carefree joy that had once radiated from her face had been replaced by something harder, sharper. The expression of a woman who had survived things that should have destroyed her. But it wasn't her appearance that made Jae-won's blood turn to ice. It was the 2 children clinging to her hands. A boy and a girl, maybe 7 years old. Twins. The boy had Jae-won's eyes, dark, intense, carrying that particular weight that he recognized from every mirror he'd ever looked into. The girl had Seo-yeon's stubborn stare, defiant even in the midst of chaos, refusing to show fear even as gunshots echoed through the street. 7 years old. 8 years since he'd left. The math was simple. The truth was devastating. Boss, one of his soldiers touched his arm. Boss, we need to move. The police are... Get them. The words came out in a voice J1 didn't recognize. Raw. Desperate. Completely stripped of the cold authority that had made him the most feared crime lord in Seoul. What? The woman. The children. Get them. Now, before anyone else sees them. The soldier followed his gaze. Confusion flickered across his face. Why would the boss care about some random woman and her kids? But he didn't question. In J1's world, questions got people killed. Yes, boss. 3 soldiers broke away and moved towards Seo-yeon. She saw them coming, saw them cutting through the crowd with the predatory efficiency of men who did violence for a living. And instead of running, she walked toward them, toward him, her eyes locked on J1's across the chaos of the street, through the smoke, the screaming civilians, the distant gunfire. She walked like a woman who had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, dreading it, and hoping for it in equal measure. She walked like a woman who had run out of options. The soldiers fell into formation around her, not grabbing, not forcing, just escorting. Whatever they saw in her face made them treat her with more respect than they showed most people. She stopped 5 feet from J1. The children pressed against her legs, watching him with eyes that should have been innocent, but weren't. They had seen too much, survived too much. He could read it in their faces, the particular wariness of children who had learned early that the world was dangerous. J1. So-yeon's voice was exactly as he remembered it. Low, musical, capable of expressing more with a single word than most people could convey in paragraphs. Except now that single word carried 8 years of abandonment. 8 years of raising his children alone. 8 years of questions he had never answered. Seo-yeon. His voice came out steadier than he felt. What are you doing here? Looking for you. She glanced at the chaos around them. Though I expected to find you in slightly less dramatic circumstances, you shouldn't be here. This area is dangerous. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. More dangerous than having the Viper Syndicate track me across 3 countries because they figured out these children belonged to you? The blood drained from J1's face. The Viper Syndicate. His oldest enemies. The organization he had been trying to destroy for 5 years. The people who had killed his father, his uncle, and everyone else who had once shared his bloodline. They knew about the children. They knew about his children. How long? His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. 3 weeks. They found us in Tokyo. We've been running ever since. Seo-yeon's composure cracked, just for a moment. I didn't want to come to you. I swore I would never ask you for anything again. But they're going to kill them, J1. They're going to kill them to hurt you. She pulled the children closer. I can't let that happen. I won't let that happen. So, I found you. And now you're going to protect them. Because whatever you've become, whatever you've done, they are yours. And you owe them at least that much. Stop right here. Subscribe to this channel immediately. I'm not asking. I'm demanding. Because what you're about to witness is a man's entire empire being ripped apart by a truth he never knew existed. For 8 years, J1 has been building a criminal kingdom. For 8 years, he thought he had no weaknesses. For 8 years, he believed he had escaped his past. He was wrong. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling me, what do you think happened 8 years ago? Why did he leave her? I want to hear your theories, because the truth is more devastating than you're imagining. J1's safe house was a fortress disguised as an ordinary building. From the outside, it looked like a modest office complex in a quiet neighborhood. From the inside, it was a military installation. Reinforced walls, hidden armories, escape tunnels that led to 3 different extraction points across the city. He had never brought anyone here who wasn't part of his inner circle. Now he was bringing a woman who hated him and 2 children who didn't know him. Seo Yun sat on a leather couch in the main room, her children pressed against her sides, her eyes tracking every soldier who moved through the space. She was cataloging exits, J1 realized, identifying threats, planning escape routes. She had learned to think like a survivor. He had taught her that, in a way, by leaving her to survive alone. Get out, he addressed his soldiers without looking at them. All of you, secure the perimeter. No one enters without my authorization. They filed out silently. The door closed, and J1 was alone with the woman he had abandoned and the children he had never known existed. Their names, he said. It wasn't a question. Min Jun and Min Seo. Seo Yun's voice was careful. They turn 8 in 3 months. 8 years old. 8 years since he'd left. The conception would have happened the night before his father was murdered. The night he had told Seo Yun he loved her for the first and last time. The night everything had changed. They don't know who I am. They know their father was a dangerous man. They know he had to go away to protect them. Seo Yun's jaw tightened. The story I told them, not the truth. And what's the truth? The truth is that their father was a law student who dreamed of prosecuting criminals. Their father met a girl in a bookstore and fell in love with her between the shelves. Their father promised he would never leave her. Her voice hardened, and then their father disappeared without a word and became the very thing he swore to destroy. J1 said nothing. There was nothing to say. Every word was true. I looked for you. Seo Yun's composure cracked further. For 2 years I looked. I filed missing person reports. I called hospitals. I drove myself insane trying to understand how the man I loved could vanish without a trace. Seo Yun. And then I saw you on the news. Kang Jae-won, the new head of the Razor Syndicate, rising star of the Seoul underworld. The prosecutor's son, who had become a monster. Tears streamed down her face. I was pregnant with your children, and I watched you on television ordering men's deaths. Min Jun and Min Seo were watching him now. Their mother's distress had pulled them out of their exhausted silence. They were studying him with expressions that contained nothing of the warmth children usually reserve for strangers. They were studying him like a threat. Ioma? Min Seo's voice was small but steady. Is this the man who's going to help us? Yes, sweetheart. He doesn't look nice. He's not nice. Seo Yun met Jae-won's eyes. But he's powerful, and right now, power is what we need. Jae-won crouched down to the children's level. They shrank back slightly, just slightly, but enough for him to notice. My name is Kang Jae-won, he said quietly, and your mother is right. I'm not nice. But I'm going to make sure no one ever hurts you. Do you understand? Min Jun spoke for the first time. The men who chased us in Tokyo. You're scarier than them? Much scarier. Good. The boy's voice was hard for a 7-year-old. Too hard, because they killed our dog. They shot him right in front of us, and they said they were going to do worse to Ioma. J1 felt something crack in his chest, something he had thought was long dead, something that felt suspiciously like his heart. They're going to regret that, he said. I promise you. He stood and turned to Seoyeon. Tell me everything. From the beginning. How they found you. What they know. Who's leading the hunt. First, tell me something. Her voice was steel. Tell me why you left. Tell me what was so important that you had to abandon a pregnant woman without a single word. Tell me the truth, J1. After 8 years, I think I've earned that much. He was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to the window, looking out at the city he had spent years conquering. The night before I left, my father was murdered. So was my uncle. So was everyone in my family who could have protected me. The Viper Syndicate was cleansing the bloodline, making sure no Kang would ever rise to challenge them again. He turned to face her. I was supposed to be next. They had people watching you, watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to finish what they started. His voice dropped. If I had stayed with you, they would have killed you too, and any child you were carrying. So, I made a choice. You chose to run. I chose to become someone they couldn't kill. Someone so dangerous, so powerful, that they would spend every moment of every day trying to survive me instead of hunting down the people I loved. He paused. I didn't run, Seoyeon. I went to war, and you won. I've been winning for 8 years. I've taken their territory, killed their leaders, destroyed everything they built. His jaw tightened. But I wasn't fast enough. They found you before I could finish them. Seoyeon stared at him. You're telling me you became a monster to protect me? I'm telling you I became what I had to become. And the man you used to be? The law student. The one who believed in justice. J1 was quiet for a long moment. He died the same night my father did. Like this video right now. Because what you're witnessing is a man confronting the destruction of everything he thought he was protecting. For 8 years, he's been building an empire of blood. For 8 years, he told himself it was necessary. And now his children are looking at him like he's the monster under their bed. Like it. Share it with someone who loves a complicated villain story. And drop a comment. Do you believe J1? Is he telling the truth about why he left? Or is there more to this story? I want to hear your thoughts, because the real war hasn't even started yet. The attack came at 3 a.m. J1 was reviewing intelligence reports in his study when the first explosion shook the building. Then the second. Then the third. He was on his feet before the sound faded, his body moving with the trained instincts of a man who had survived. 17 assassination attempts. Phone in one hand, weapon in the other. Voice already barking commands. Report! Perimeter breach, boss. His head of security sounded calm, but J1 could hear gunfire in the background. At least 40 hostiles. Professional. They're hitting all 3 entrance points simultaneously. The woman and children, still in the safe room. But boss, they're not trying to enter the building. They're trying to draw us out. The realization hit J1 like a physical blow. This wasn't an assault. This was a distraction. Where? He demanded. Where's the real attack? I don't. The line went dead. The lights went out, and in the sudden darkness, J1 heard something that made his blood run cold. A child's scream. He ran. Through hallways suddenly plunged into darkness, past soldiers who were scrambling to respond to threats that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. His heart pounding a rhythm he barely recognized, the rhythm of fear. He had forgotten what fear felt like. He was remembering now. The safe room door was open. It shouldn't have been open. The safe room was sealed with biometric locks, reinforced with steel plating, designed to withstand anything short of military-grade explosives. But it was open, and inside, illuminated by the emergency lighting, stood a nightmare. 3 men in tactical gear, faces covered, weapons trained on Seo Yon, who was shielding both children with her body, blood streaming from a cut on her forehead. And behind them, "Hello, nephew." The voice was oil and venom. J1 stopped in the doorway, his weapon trained on the speaker, his mind racing through options and finding none that didn't end with dead children. Pak Sung-ho, his father's cousin, the man who had ordered the massacre that had started all of this, the head of the Viper Syndicate. The person J1 had been hunting for 8 years. He was old now, gray-haired, but his eyes held the same cold cruelty that J1 remembered from childhood. "You've built quite an empire," Sung-ho continued, stepping out from behind his soldiers. "I have to admit, I underestimated you. When you disappeared after your father's death, I assumed you had run away to die in obscurity somewhere. I was running toward you, just taking my time. Yes, I've noticed you've cost me quite a bit over the years. Territory, money, soldiers. It's been annoying." Sung-ho's smile widened. "But now I understand why. Now I understand what was driving you. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't ambition. It was love." He gestured at the children. "You were trying to build a world safe enough for them, weren't you?" J1 said nothing. "The irony is beautiful. You became a monster to protect them from monsters. You drowned yourself in blood so they could grow up clean." Sung-ho laughed. "And in the end, they're going to die anyway. Because you weren't fast enough, weren't smart enough, weren't monster enough. Let them go. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll kill everyone in this room and then spend the rest of my life hunting down every person you've ever cared about." "You'll try." Sung-ho's smile didn't waver. "But here's the thing, nephew. I'm old. I don't care about the future anymore. I only care about making sure you suffer as much as possible before you die." He looked at the children. "Which one should I start with? The boy or the girl? Subscribe right now. I'm not joking. Subscribe before you read another word, because what happens next is going to define whether these children live or die, whether J1 remains a monster or becomes something else entirely. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment. What would you do if you were J1? Would you risk your children's lives for a chance at victory? Or would you surrender and pray for mercy? Tell me your answer, because J1 is about to make the hardest decision of his life.